All righty. Good evening, everyone. My name is Hunter Gooderham, and I'm the chapter lead here in Devon. I thank you for all making it tonight. It's a great turnout, and we're going to have a great time. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Bathrooms back through those doors and hang a right. Exits over there and out the back door. Pretty obvious. So if you haven't grabbed a coffee or refreshments, they're just back in that corner there. And there's merchandise out in the back at the tables. I encourage you to go visit it, grab a pamphlet. There's a QR code on there. It'll take you to the website so you can get more information. We're going to have a Q&A period at the end, so if anybody has any questions, hold on to those. We'll have an open mic, and you can ask those questions at that time. So to kick things off, I'm going to invite my dad, Jeff Gooderham, to come up and open with a prayer.
Evening, everyone. I invite you to please join with me in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we praise you tonight for this chance to gather and to look to the future and the plans and the purposes that you have for this great province. I thank you for each one who is investing their time and treasure in this incredible endeavor, and we ask that you would bless the work of our hands. Lord, your word says in Matthew 28 that all authority has been given to you in heaven and on earth. And so we acknowledge tonight that for a nation to prosper and thrive, we must first commit ourselves to the lordship of Christ, proclaiming that all we do, whether it be in word or deed, that it all be done for the glory of God. We know that an independent Alberta would be great for us economically. We know that it would be great for us socially and politically, but of greatest importance and of greatest significance, an independent Alberta would be great for us spiritually. For we all know that Canada has become a godless nation, where good is called evil and evil is called good. And so tonight, Lord, we pray that you would grant us your blessing as we seek to bring revival to this province, to each home, to each family, to each person, reviving righteousness, holiness, and an obedience to your word and to your mandate for godly living. Lord, you have told us, if you are not the one who builds the house, then all that we do is in vain. And so, Lord, I pray that we would truly commit ourselves to see you glorified from Lethbridge to High Level, from Jasper to Lloydminster, and that your blessing and favor would rest upon this land, and that you would keep this land of Alberta glorious and free. And we pray all of this in the mighty name of Jesus, our Lord and Savior, and all God's people said, amen.
Thank you for that, Dad. At this time, I would like to introduce Dennis Modry. He's going to be the first speaker for this evening. Dr. Modry is a cardiothoracic surgeon and critical care specialist who started and directed Western Canada's first heart and lung transplantation program. During his 32 years in practice, he also served on the financial committee of successive provincial conservative governments since the Getty era. He is a founding member and chair of the Alberta Prosperity Project and Society. He is a fiscal conservative, student of the Canadian Constitution, and is here to speak to us on the benefits of provincial sovereignty. So please join me and welcome Dr. Dennis Modry.
Thank you, Hunter. Now, before I begin, we're going to show just a brief 4-minute video. Some of you may have seen this before, but by way of background to this video, we didn't know it was coming. It was created by Jim Ferguson from Scotland, who started an organization called Freedom Train International. And what's poignant is really what he says, and I want to emphasize it. He says, freedom-loving people around the world are hoping and praying that the quest for Alberta sovereignty is successful, because they view this as a beacon of light and hope and a pathway for them to achieve their sovereignty as well. So without further ado, we'll show you the video.
Well, hi there, this is Jim Ferguson of Freedom Train International, and I have a gift for the people of Alberta. We stand with you, Alberta. We stand with all the Albertans in their quest for independence and sovereignty. We hope you like it. I want you to know that patriots all around the world are watching Alberta right now. We stand with you, and I hope you enjoy this. Just remember, they can't kill the mountain. They can't drown the plain. They can't burn the spirit that won't be chained. We'll speak soon.
Have been cast, the die is set, but Alberta ain't ready to kneel just yet. They chose their king, their power was met, but we don't answer to Ottawa yet. No crown gave us what we've earned, just dirt and fire and lessons learned. Now the ground it shakes, the steel it groans, and Alberta walks alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. From the rigs to the rails, the crops to the code, we lit their streets, we bore their load. They laughed at pride, they mocked the West, but freedom don't die, it just waits for the test. The cowboys ride, the farmers rise, 5 million strong under open skies. No leash, no lie, no foreign throne. This land is steel and it stands alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. Can't kill the mountain, can't drown the plain, can't burn the spirit that won't be chained. He stares down east with a calloused hand and says, this time we draw the line in the land. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free.
I can assume you like that. So I was told that it's difficult to see from the back. Is that true? Can you see me well from the back? You can? All right, then I can stand here and I won't frustrate Max, who's trying to film everything. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. It really warms my cardiovascular surgical heart to see you all here tonight. And let me pose a couple of questions. How many of you are here for the very first time who've never been to an APP event before? Wonderful. Wonderful. I congratulate you on coming, and I congratulate those in the audience who have been to one before for bringing your friends or family members here this evening. Thanks so much. Okay, now how many people already are on the independence train? Okay, quite a number, the majority. And how many people are here because they need to learn more about what Alberta sovereignty means for them before they can hop on that train? Great, wonderful. And I'm really glad that there are a number of people here that haven't made that decision yet, because as someone who has dealt with informed consent all my life, I do want you to be informed, and I'm hoping that by the end of this evening, you will have enough information to make an informed choice as to what you think is best for you, your family, and future generations, and to plan for your retirement if you're still working. All right, so now with that, let's consider the term sovereignty for a moment. Now, everybody sort of ostensibly knows what it means, but let's put some definitions around it. Sovereignty in its highest form of expression is ultimate control, okay? So for example, God is sovereign. Nothing is above God, correct? Now, it also means at a more elementary level, sovereignty means self-governance, free from external interference. What sovereignty is not is a political issue. It's not a right or a left issue. It's pragmatic because Alberta sovereignty will benefit everybody. You can also consider sovereignty as freedom from persecution. And when I say persecution, what do you mean? What might I mean by that? Well, it's freedom from political, economic, cultural, religious, and we touched on that, medical, and I think you've all seen the persecution that you faced with that, and regulatory persecution. In a noble way, though, sovereignty is the pursuit of self-determination, the ability to choose your path, to choose the goals and aspirations that you want, and to achieve freedom and prosperity. And it's freedom from what? It's freedom from the federal government, the World Health Organization, and the WEF. So those are some things that you can think about in terms of sovereignty. Let's look at it from an individual perspective. Consider each one of you as a sovereign individual. When you give up some control of your life through regulations, you're giving up a little bit of your sovereignty. When you give up your tax, your wealth, your income to the tax department, you're giving up some of your ability to purchase the goods and services that you want for yourself, for your family, to plan for your retirement and future generations. So sovereignty has a lot of meaning in this context of being less regulated, less controlled, and less governed. So let's consider now sovereignty at the provincial level, okay? Many of you know that when the UCP government was elected, what did they do? They implemented Bill 1. What was that? The Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act. How has it worked out? Why was it implemented? It was implemented to push back against federal overreach of provincial constitutional authority. And to answer the question I just posed, how has it worked out? Well, it hasn't worked out very well. Because when you think about it, in a properly functioning federation, when there are concerns at the provincial level, you should be able to discuss those concerns with the federal government and negotiate some sort of a solution that's beneficial for all concerned. But that's not what's happened. What the provincial government has demonstrated is the inability to deal with the federal government, except for, what have they done? They've launched 18 lawsuits against the federal government in relation to the development and transport of our natural resources, agriculture, property rights, and censorship. And a new bill, we just saw in the media today, that there's another lawsuit being launched against the federal government against Bill C-69. Even though the Supreme Court ruled in our favor, the federal government didn't honor the Supreme Court's ruling on Bill C-69. That's the No More Pipelines bill. And they've just ignored it. And so the federal government has just made some tweaks to their original Bill C-69, which is why Bill C-69 is still in place. So when you think about this, you have to ask yourself the question: how did we get into this position where there's this profound imbalance in power between the federal government and the provincial government that cannot be overcome? And it cannot be overcome for the simple reason that it was designed that way. Let's go back in time to understand a little bit of this. Many of you will know that Alberta and Saskatchewan were incorporated into Canada September 1, 1905, thanks to the efforts of Sir Clifford Sifton. He was the Minister of the Interior in the Liberal government of Sir Wilfrid Laurier. Now, what's prescient that he said was what he said to an audience in 1904, okay, before Alberta and Saskatchewan joined. These words come from his book, his words, Clifford Sifton, Volume 2, page 95, for anybody who wants to look it up. He said, "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire." Now, Canadian patriots in 1904 were the people living predominantly in the East. So we desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairies shall go to enrich our people in the East, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way contribute to its prosperity. Did you hear anything about the prosperity of the West or the prairies? No, you didn't, and it's nowhere in his book either. So, in essence, in 1905, we started as a colony to serve the interests of the East. And here it is, 120 years later, we're pillaged and plundered for our wealth, and we're having values and cultural issues rammed down our throat that don't align with those values and that culture which was based on Judeo-Christian teachings. So here we are today having to deal with the kind of things that were envisioned by Clifford Sifton in 1904. So here it is, like I said, 120 years later, and we're still pillaged and plundered. And these values thrust down our throat. So how is this manifest economically? Well, as a consequence of equalization, the national energy policy, other federal confiscatory tax policies, and regulatory costs, which is something that most of us don't even think about, we've given over $800 billion to the federal government, haven't received a cent in return. And on the national energy policy, many of you will remember that, but as you know, in 1980, when that was implemented, it devastated Alberta. Businesses went under, they left the province, people lost their homes, committed suicide, it was a real mess. Did Ottawa care? Not at all. Otherwise, they would have done something about it. When Marc Lalonde, who was the brainchild behind the national energy policy, was asked a few years later, why did you implement it? He said, well, we could not let Alberta become the center of economic power in Canada, which it was because of course, the gold rush. I mean, I said the gold rush, but it's really the oil rush, as it were. And so, further to this, in terms of the economic hit, because we can't get our oil and gas to international markets, we're losing $26.5 billion a year, according to a research report from the Frontier Center for Public Policy out of Winnipeg. The Premier herself has pointed out just in the last several years, we've lost over $500 billion that of planned investment in Alberta that didn't occur. Why? Because the investors couldn't see a reasonable business case. And why was that? Because of federal regulation and taxation. Let's look at economic growth in Canada compared now to all industrialized countries in the world, okay? This is important. Compared to all industrialized countries in the world, Canada's economic growth is dead last. Why? Federal regulation and taxation. It's really pretty simple. Okay, so now, do you think things are going to get better with Mr. Carney? Do you know why? Well, he is a prominent member of the World Economic Forum, right? And the agenda of the World Economic Forum is to control the population using environmental, social governance metrics, okay? So in other words, as long as you're compliant with environmental dictates, social dictates, and governance dictates from the federal government, you will be granted privileges. And if you're not compliant, those privileges will be eliminated or minimized. So this is how, the basis of how they're going to control you. Along with that, to cement this in place is the idea of a digital ID, okay, right out of the World Economic Forum playbook, and a central bank digital currency, which Mr. Carney, being a central banker, that's his background, as you all know, is exactly what he wants to implement. And we can give you an example of that right now with respect to how it might impact you with the firearms confiscation plan that's coming up. Firearms is property. David Lametti, the Minister of Justice under the Trudeau government, has said Canadians do not have the right to own property, and he's right, constitutionally you don't. Okay, so let's look at property rights in relation to firearms and how this could happen. As of the end of October, for those of us who own firearms, like I do, if you don't turn in your firearms, the next day you're a criminal, all right? Now, that comes right out of the Minister of Safety's mouth, okay? How would they, just as an example, control this if you didn't give up your firearms? And the Premier in the province of Alberta said, well, we're not going to allow the RCMP or any police service to confiscate your guns. Okay, that's fine. Just try and leave the province with your passport and the information that's with the Border Patrol. They look at the screen, your name, hasn't handed in his firearms or her firearms. You think you're going to be able to travel? This is the kind of control that can be exerted. I'm giving it to you as an example. Do I know exactly that will happen? No, I don't. But they can control how much you eat in terms of meat. They can control whether or not you can even drive a gasoline vehicle. And you know that's coming as well, because they said it is coming. All right, so given this dystopian future that Mr. Carney has envisioned, and from his book Values, you know, he talks about the idea that in terms of controlling the climate and reducing CO2, that there must be rigid controls on individual freedoms, on businesses aligned with the oil and gas industry and agriculture, and also financial institutions that would finance those businesses. This is not me saying it, this is Mr. Carney. It's in his book, Values. And he admits that assets will be stranded, that you won't be able to sell your used internal combustion engine vehicle, and that buildings will become unrentable, unusable. So this, again, is the dystopian future. By a show of hands, how many people like this concept that he has envisioned to control you? like it? How many people like that vision that Mr. Carney has for us? I don't see any hands up, so the question is what can we do about it? Yeah. Bang. Yeah, lock and load, I like it. That was funny. That's the best laugh I've had today. All right. So the point that I'm getting at here is, will negotiations work with this federal government? Think about this. Every provincial government before our current premier's government has tried to negotiate with the federal government. Is it naive to think that our current provincial government can negotiate effectively against the federal government? No. Hence, like I said earlier, 18 lawsuits, So the only solution that we have to solve the imbalance in power between the federal government and the provincial government is a successful referendum on sovereignty. That gives the premier the leverage to negotiate from a position of strength. That's why it is so important to have a successful referendum on sovereignty. And you know what? Everybody benefits. Even those who don't feel as though they want to support Alberta sovereignty. You can't help but benefit. And how is it that you might benefit, as an example? Well, right now, if you're making $100,000, I'm just giving you numbers so you can picture this in your head. Right now, if you're making $100,000 a year, according to the Fraser Institute, you are taxed at a rate of 43%. Oh, an interesting vignette. 1910, tax rate was 6%. 1950, it was 18%. 2010, it was 33%. And today, like I said, it's 43%. Okay? So, think about the idea of Alberta as a sovereign country and completely out from under all federal regulation and all taxation. And think about also being out from under provincial taxation and the prospect at some point in the next few years following a successful referendum on sovereignty, the prospect of, for the first time ever, truly owning your home, your property, because it's not taxed. Think about that. Now, why we know this is possible is because we've done a very detailed analysis that many of you will know. It's in the Value of Freedom document. It's on our website. We have version 2 coming, few tweaks. When you put something out there for public consumption, public is smart, and the public can make some good, sound suggestions, and we're internalizing those and making some changes in the document. But it doesn't take away the fact that being out from under all federal regulation and all taxation, that the fiscal capacity surplus that will then exist means that we can eliminate all forms of taxation, except a corporate tax that might be at 12 or 15%, and a small consumption tax that might be in the area of 5 to 8%. You pay a GST right now. But if you're out from under all other taxes, and the goods and services that you buy don't have any taxes on them either, you see that the person making $100,000 a year who now has $57,000 of disposable income, following Alberta sovereignty, that same person has $90,000 to $92,000 to purchase the goods and services that he or she wants. And that's not all. For pensioners, for example, there would be an immediate benefit, at least a 40% increase in the first year, just as a result of not paying $9 billion to the federal government and only getting 6 back. That other 3 could bump your pension payments up by another 40%. But think of this. For the first time, your pension and your OAS could be indexed to inflation. What a novel idea. I guess the federal government never thought of that. All right, so how do we get there? Well, we get there as a result of signing a petition in support of a referendum on Alberta sovereignty. And you've heard the question, but I'm going to repeat it. Do you agree that the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? That's the question. So we're going through a court proceeding right now. We expect that we'll win that, and we'll be conducting the petition signature collection subsequent to the final court ruling, which will come end of November or beginning of December, guaranteed by Justice Feasby that he will have his ruling before the end of the year. So that is the process to get to a successful referendum. And we know that we can be successful with the petition because did you know that we have more members than all of the political parties? We have more than twice the number of members, more than twice the number of members of all political parties in the province of Alberta combined. So I like to say the 177,000 signatures that we need will be a cakewalk, but I'm not the one that's going to be doing the hard work. It's our 20,000 plus volunteers, and we still need more volunteers because you know what? You're all part of this process. If you want sovereignty, you have to be part of this process, and I congratulate again those people who brought friends and neighbors and relatives to the meeting tonight. Now, I'm going to say something else that I think is really important to understand. We had a meeting a week ago this past Thursday with Paul St. Pierre Plamondon. He is the leader of the Parti Québécois. He contacted us. He wanted to have a meeting with us, not with the Premier, but with Mitch and Jeff and myself representing the Alberta Prosperity Society and the Alberta Prosperity Project. It was instructive to understand from Mr. Plamondon just how aligned we are on so many things. When asked why does he want Quebec to become a sovereign country, he said these words: we want to preserve our language and our culture, and we want to get out from under, are you ready for this? Federal corruption. That's what he said. He also pointed out something very interesting, because he expects to be the premier next year. They're leading in the polls significantly. They won the last 3 by-elections. Trending upwards is the sovereignty movement in Quebec again. But he said, we don't need equalization payments. Did you know that? He said, we don't need equalization payments. He produced a document, just like our Value of Freedom document, that they put together that points out that when they are out from under all federal regulation and taxation, they too will have a fiscal capacity surplus that's greater than that $14 billion that we're giving them right now. Isn't that interesting? And don't be fussed about an oil pipeline either, because that's to the east. That isn't going to happen. And it's simple, something I didn't understand before. Notwithstanding they're concerned about pipelines that might leak, more relevant is the fact that they don't have refineries that can handle our bitumen. So you understand. Here's something else that's happened. The leader of the Bloc Québécois, Mr. Blanchet, has contacted us. He also wants to have a meeting with us. So you see what's going on here. Notwithstanding that the U.S. is solidly in support of Alberta sovereignty as well. And the international attention that we've achieved consequent to your support, and I guess some very logical arguments regarding Alberta sovereignty and why we need it. This is why we are where we are at now. With this type of recognition, with all of you, you're the ones that are leading this project. This is a populist movement. That means there is no leader. You are the ones that are leading this, and keep leading it. Keep helping us get the message out. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to answering questions.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Modry, for that. That was great. All right, so at this time, we are going to be taking up a donation. So we're going to be circulating some buckets. If you want to help with funding of this building, getting the building, and other events that are going to be taking place, you can put cash in the bucket. If you don't have cash on you, you can go to the back and grab a pamphlet. You can open it up, and there's a QR code. Scan the QR code, scroll down the page a little bit, and you'll see a donate button. So if you want to help support the movement, then you can do that there. So it looks like the buckets will be coming around here in a minute. Yes, we're also live streaming the event. So, and all the other, well, lots of the events are also live streamed. The website is freedomcalendar.net, and it's on YouTube as well. So you can check that out. There's 150 people online watching right now, so that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, while those baskets get passed around, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mitch Sylvester. Mitch is the owner-operator of Sylvestre Sporting Goods, a well-established store in Bonnyville since 1989. Mitch is actively involved in political advocacy. He chairs the Alberta First Pension Plan Initiative and is CEO of Alberta Prosperity Project. Mitch is an advocate for the people and speaks with honesty and integrity. Please welcome Mitch Sylvester.
Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. It's awesome to see so many people in the room. We actually see this every night. People are engaged. People understand what's happening. People understand that, and I'm going to share this with you, I always thought that the Great Reset could go one way or the other. I think they're taking a chance on trying to reset us, that we might actually say no and reset it so that it's more benefit for us. And I think we can do that. Oh, I got to get a little closer. I wander, and Max has got me, I got to stay between the flags. So I guess that's the deal. All right, so here's the thing. Never before in my lifetime have we had to be concerned with the federal government hurting its own people. Never before in my lifetime have we had to worry about government sabotaging our biggest industries. There's so many things going on that are absolutely novel and have never happened before that it's very hard to ignore them. And if we do ignore them, we will be responsible for the consequence, and that's a big problem. So what I'm going to spend some time doing tonight is explaining to you what I'm seeing and hoping that you will see things the way I see them, because I see this as an emergency. I see this as an emergency that we have to deal with right now. And unfortunately, I think the only solution to the emergency is for us to leave Alberta, for us to leave Canada. And I was never an Alberta independent of Canada person until April 28th. When that federal election happened, after the way the Liberals have been treating us for the last 10 years, and we lost that election, I'm convinced that we'll possibly never see another Conservative government in Alberta ever again. Because I don't understand how it could possibly happen based on what's going on. So let's get going here. All right. When I became Premier, I thought I would fix everything in 6 or 7 months. But everything is broken. That's from Danielle Smith, sitting with me in Bonnyville at an event that we had there, a supper. We had 800 people in the hall at $250 a plate. We support Danielle. I'm a UCPCA chair. I was the UCPCA chair for the province of Alberta 2 years ago. I'm quite proud of that. We worked very hard to earn that. But the thing is that I get the opportunity to sit and discuss things with the Premier because of that. And what she means here is that it's too corrupt to fix. What could she possibly mean by that, saying that if she's the Premier of Alberta, that she cannot fix it? What's the problem? The problem is that there's things in government that she can't control. Bureaucrats, ministers, all kinds of people that are feeding her information that have been put there before. So that is called, actually, if you want to know what the term is, that's called actually a version of the deep state. So those people are not people that she actually put there. They were there before she got there. Those are lifetime employees. That is a big problem. In a new and independent Alberta, we'll have a chance to change that, because some of these people cannot be moved. So understand that. What she means here is she can't move things as fast as she like with AHS or other things because she's being blocked by her own people in her own government. This is the attitude of the federal government. Now understand this. The federal government could change all of this in a week. They could absolutely make everything fair within a week if they chose to want to do that. But the problem is that they're gathering so much money from Alberta that they would never want to change that. Just understand, by the time we're done this presentation tonight, you'll understand exactly how much money they're taking that we can identify. And I know that we would be scandalized if we knew how much they're actually taking, because you don't catch them at everything. All right, so Alberta is the richest piece of real estate in the world. No one has what we have. We're third or fourth in the world in oil production. We're second or third in the world in natural gas production. We have clean water, we have agriculture, we have forestry, we have mining, we have all manner of things that many, many nations in the world have none of. But we have an abundance of everything. We have everything. There is absolutely no way that Alberta is not self-sustainable. Alberta would be one of the richest countries in the world. All right. This is Canada. Canada's third largest oil reserves, fifth in gold, second in forest, first in fresh water. We should be loaded, but according to Mr. Polyev, instead we're broke. So just understand, the government of Canada owes $1.3 trillion. Government of Alberta is in the hole $100 billion. Now this is Alberta's net contribution to Ottawa. And I want to show you how unfair this is, just so you understand that we're not making this up. It is skewed towards Alberta. Nobody else pays what Alberta pays. And the reason that we do is because they don't need our vote and they don't care. They absolutely don't need our vote. By the time the vote gets here, it's all done. We only have this many seats, and to them it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't change their ability to be in power. So Alberta contributes from 2007 to 2022, $244 billion. The next closest one is BC at $46 billion. We pay 6 times more than anybody. 6 times more than anybody. The largest economy in Canada is Ontario, not Alberta. Just understand that. But yet we pay 6 times more towards Confederation than anybody else. And notice Quebec at the other end. $327 billion is what they get. Now, if you've ever been to Quebec, you understand Quebec is not a have-not province. Quebec doesn't include Hydro-Quebec in its numbers, so that becomes a problem. And I'll get to that in a minute. Canada Pension Plan. If you paid Canada Pension your whole life, you will get Canada Pension. It's the law. They cannot not give you your pension. They have to give you your old age security as well. Every pension in the world has a portability clause. You can live in Costa Rica, you can live in Panama, you can live in the United States, you can live anywhere, and you must collect your pension. That is the law. That's what you paid into that. Now, you will retain your Canadian citizenship after Alberta becomes independent. So you can be a dual citizen. Our Prime Minister is a citizen of UK, USA, and Canada. So understand that. So as a Canadian citizen, if you paid into CPP, you will get your CPP. Now have a look and see who contributes most to Canada Pension. Again, Alberta, by far. That's 6 times more, at least, than the next closest person. Dennis alluded to the fact that we pay $9 billion a year to CPP and we collect 6. That is an ongoing thing. That $3 billion overage goes into a fund for the seniors of Alberta. That fund is, with interest, is recallable by the Premier whenever the Premier decides it should happen. According to the Life Work report, Bill Morneau, who was Finance Minister for the country, said that the federal government owes Alberta in pension fund $335 billion. That's 2 years ago. They're collecting 9.9% interest on that money. So 2 years of that is approximately $60 billion, plus $3 billion and $3 billion overpayment. They actually owe us $400 billion. If we left the money in CPP and they're actually getting their 9% interest, that's $36 billion a year in interest. Our seniors collect $6. Our seniors collect $6. The interest on that money alone would be 6 times more than our seniors are collecting, plus the $9 billion contribution from our workers. That fund would grow exponentially every year. Why has the Premier not called that back to Alberta? Me either. I don't know. Because Alberta's $100 billion in debt. We would have a $400 billion asset. Of course, they're not going to want to give us a $400 billion asset. You understand that? That's clearly not the way it is. Trevor Tombe came out and said in the Alberta Next panel that Alberta could possibly get $150 to $180 billion. So let's just round it off to $200 billion. $200 billion at 9% is $18 billion a year, even at that number. $18 billion a year is 3 times what our seniors need, plus the $9 billion contribution. So we would be making money every year on our pension fund by just, we could give our seniors a 40% increase in pay based on what our workers contribute, and the interest on that money would be going and growing exponentially every year. I was told that the Premier did not call that back because she said it was a no-brainer a year ago, and I've done 100 pension town halls around Alberta, and now there's a majority of Albertans, according to a poll that the Premier conducted, it went from 30% to 55% once the people understood the numbers. So the numbers are actually there. All right, thank you. But the whole thing of this is that we're $100 billion in debt and we have a chance to bring a $200 billion asset to Alberta. Why isn't it here? That's my question. It seems foolish not to have it here. And in light of everything that's going on, I would suggest it would be the right thing to do. We give Quebec $13.6 billion in equalization payments. I alluded to the fact that they don't include Hydro-Quebec in their formula, so it allows them to be a have-not province. So they don't put their biggest industry into the formula, so that allows them to collect $13.6 billion a year. And it's annual. It's year after year, 13.6 to 13.3 billion. That $13 billion would be staying here in Alberta. So let's go back. $3 billion extra in pension, $13.3 billion a year here in equalization. We overpay EI by $2 billion a year. So right now we're up around $20 billion fiscal surplus, and we haven't saved a penny on taxes. So our government operates on about a $67 to $70 billion budget. Under the Smith government, the government has actually grown, not been made smaller. It's actually bigger than any time in history, bigger than the NDP. We believe that could be reduced. But when we did the value of freedom, we used numbers that would be less than what we thought they could get instead of bigger. So our projections are cautious, not optimistic, because we would rather over-deliver than under-deliver. So that was also based on an $8 billion deficit, so just understand that. All right, so here's the way the system is rigged. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. They could change this in a minute. They could give us more justices if they like. So all of Western Canada has 2 justices. Quebec and Ontario have 3 each, and the Maritimes have 1. In order for us to change the Constitution, we would have to have a majority there. The Supreme Court would have to rule in our favor. Also, both houses would have to rule in our favor, and Quebec has a veto. So they're obviously not going to change the Constitution very easily. Western Canada, population 11.7 million. We have 24 senators. Atlantic Canada, 2.4 million. They have 30 senators. So just understand that. It's not fair. We totally understand that's not fair. They could change that. We pass one piece of legislation, it would be done. Either reduce their number to 20 seats and increase ours to 30. It would be that easily done. But they don't want to do that. Why don't they want to do that? Because then they would lose control. Pardon me? Oh, look, between the flags. All right. All right, so the House is the same thing. So we got 2.46 people, 32 federal seats. Alberta, 4.4 million people, 37 federal seats. So just understand, they understand this is not fair. Alberta's growing exponentially. We should be getting more seats, but they're not giving us more seats. They don't want us to have more seats. And we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, let's just not ignore the last 10 years. I firmly believe this with all my heart. And this is why I drive all over Alberta to tell you what's going on. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. I believe the Liberal government is plundering our treasury. And I believe they're doing it on purpose. Do not for 1 minute believe that they're incompetent. Do not believe for 1 minute that Justin Trudeau is a buffoon, because we're going to get into that too. Do not believe that these people do not know what they're doing. They've been doing it for 100 years. They totally know what they're doing. Here's an audit of $187 billion worth of Liberal infrastructure spending. They find 20,000 missing projects. Okay? ArriveCan, but they sealed that, by the way. We'll get to that. $324 million for a vaccine factory that never produced a vaccine. $400 million in the green slush fund at the end that Trudeau did not answer questions for but called a federal election. We're talking about $1 billion worth of missed money. Do you remember the $16 glass of orange juice that caused a Conservative MP to have to resign? We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars here with no audit. No audit here. How much of the $187 billion do you think is missing? A lot of it. I'm going to tell you that for sure. All right, now here's how, this is Mr. Trudeau, the buffoon, brilliantly took us down a path towards where we are today. So just understand, they're globalists, and we're going to explain what that is in a minute. Mr. Trudeau said to the New York Times, there's no core identity, no mainstream in Canada, and consequently that makes us the first post-national state. What's a post-national state? It's a state with no borders. Post-nation. So a state with no borders. Why do we need borders? To keep our people in, to keep other people out, so that we can deal within the area that we live in. That's what borders are for. We can control what goes on within our borders, but if we become globalist and post-national, then we have less control. Mr. Carney is on the board of directors of the World Economic Forum. Mr. Trudeau, according to Mr. Schwab, has been a young member of the World Economic Forum for a long time. So why is that a problem to Alberta? Because what they want to do with Alberta is make it post-national. And he said that. He said that about the whole country, however. Canada is the crown jewel of any country in the world right now if somebody else wanted to take it over. I've been saying for years that we're in a form of warfare, that we're just not understanding it. And when Tucker Carlson came to Calgary not very long ago, I was involved with bringing him there. He said it would be easier if they had rifles and jackboots. At least you could identify them. All right, this is how it all started. In 1954, there was a statute in the Criminal Code of Canada that said it was illegal for media to lie to the public. However, in 2019, Bill C-39 was voted and passed in Parliament to remove it, meaning no accountability for media to tell the truth or lie. So since 2019, and then Mr. Trudeau gave him $700 million, right? Remember that. So since 2019, they have been allowed to lie to you. And they have. They've lied to you a lot. The First Amendment of the United States says one of the most important things you need is a free press to keep an eye on government. What Mr. Trudeau just did is he created the largest propaganda system in the history of Canada. Now understand this, I'm old enough to remember when that was the case, when you needed to have verification for stories and all the rest of that stuff, or you went to jail, right? Nobody's going to jail anymore for doing this. So what's happening? It's confusing everybody. And it's on purpose. People our age, my age, we're used to depending on the news. Those are the people that are saying, oh, elbows up. We can't do this for Canada. And you can't get mad at them. That was the way they lived their whole lives. Who the hell knows about C-39 in this room before I told you about it just a minute ago? Yeah, well, 5 or 8 people. So the whole room here, mostly enlightened people, had no idea that the government of Canada actually passed a law that would allow them to lie to you. That's a pretty big deal in my world. That's the first step. Control the information. What's the first thing Adolf Hitler did when he became the boss? He put a radio in everybody's house. And everybody thought that was a nice gift. He put a radio in the house so that he could control the message. All right, and then they don't want you talking to each other. We understand this. So they're killing the independent news media as well as not allowing you to put any hate speech, or that's coming on. Like they're already talking about hate speech rules right now. In England, it's out of control. So not only that, you're going to get scared. You'll be afraid to say anything online because you're going to say it's in the, you're going to not hurt somebody's feelings, or you're going to bully somebody, or all that manner of stuff, but then it controls the information, and that's the worst thing. So the other thing that's going to happen is all of your kids are going to be getting all the information from the same place. At least we're at the age where we're capable to siphon some of that out and make a decision based on stuff that we've known. But that's not the case anymore. Now here's the second step. The very concept of a nation founded by European settlers is offensive to me. Old stock white Canadians are an unpleasant relic and quite frankly replaceable, and we will replace them. This is Mr. Trudeau talking about his open borders immigration strategy. And then what do? This is immigration under Mr. Trudeau. In 2015, Mr. Trudeau became Prime Minister. They're bringing up to 2 million to 2.5 million people a year into Canada. Why are they doing that? Because they want to change our politics. And they actually want to replace us. That's exactly what they said. So let's do the numbers. We're 44 million people in Canada. We'll say that, 15 million of those people are old people or kids. At least 25 million people. They've been bringing 2 million people into Canada a year for the last 3 or 4 years. That's 8 or 10 million people. We have 25 million workers. If they continue to do that for 5 or 6 years, what do you think is going to happen? And I'm not mad at the immigrants. The immigrants are coming here for the life that we had when we were growing up. The life that says that we could grow old in a country that we would feel safe in. The second thing is that if we worked hard, we could basically earn whatever we need. We could have a good living and make a life for ourselves and our children. However, they are trying to take that very thing away from us. They're trying to hollow out the middle class, and that's exactly what they're doing. The unemployment rate in Alberta is about 9%, 15% of it for kids under 24, because these workers are taking up jobs. All right, and if they bring these immigrants into Canada, they're entitled to up to $224 a day when they become refugees, $83,000 a year. How much are you getting in your old age pension? $1,200 a month, $1,000 a month. And you worked here your whole life. But these guys have never been here, and they're actually giving them $85,000 a year. That's a problem. And here's another problem. Do you notice that that information thing came out in 2019, the year before COVID? How much false information do you think they spread during COVID? What's the odds that they were actually knew that was going to happen? I don't know that. I'm just asking you, that's a possibility. Here's the other thing that happened during COVID. They sealed and hid a bunch of information from you. Our governments were aware of things that they shouldn't have been aware of before COVID became a deal. It says in the Davidson report, recommended reading for COVID is the Pfizer documents or the Fiber Papers by Naomi Wolf, and if you have time, it's referenced in the Alberta's COVID-19 pandemic response by Dr. Gary Davidson, who I know very well. And I'll just say one thing to that. The government knew before COVID restrictions that they're all about political power and control. And they retroactively passed a bill to protect themselves during COVID, which is totally against the law. That's the Alberta government. So then we fired Mr. Kenny based on all of that stuff. I did a lot of work on that. Trust me, we did. And Mr. Kenny got removed, but here was the problem. Lots of his cabinet ministers and people around him are still there. So that becomes a problem. In a new and independent Alberta, we would be able to start from square one with everything. That is one of the biggest features of a new and independent Alberta. We can start brand new with a new constitution, which we'll have out by the end of the month. So you'll be able to understand what's going on there. All right. So Mr. Trudeau handed Mr. Carney the keys, but not before the third thing that he did. The third thing that he did was he printed a whole bunch of money. He doubled the money supply. Mr. Trudeau, in 1 year, printed more money than all previous prime ministers in Canada combined. So what did that do? That created inflation. What does inflation do? Inflation basically, depending on how much money he printed, let's say he doubled it, so your actual money, only about half as much as it did before. That's kind of a rough rule. And are we seeing that? Well, I'm still in business. I'm in the sporting goods business. I sell guns, I sell fishing, I sell team sports, I sell all manner of sports. And I just use this example. A box of Remington 30-06 ammunition 2-3 years ago was $29.99 a box. And it was that for 10 or 15 years. It's $62.99 today. And I went to, in Hinton, I went to Mr. Mike's. I was doing an event down the road from there, and I had some time. So I went into Mr. Mike's at 2 o'clock because I hadn't eaten, and I ordered a steak, a salad, and 2 bottles of Perrier. $75. I went, whoo. All right, and here's the problem with not having a free and independent press. Mr. Carney said in his book, Western society is morally rotten and has been corrupted by capitalism, which has brought about a climate emergency. This, he claims, requires rigid controls on personal freedom, industry, and corporate funding. Rigid controls on industry. That means, and I know this for a fact, if you're in the wrong business, they will not lend you money. So just understand this. What if you put too much fertilizer in the ground and you're a farmer? They'll rake you. What if you're in the gun business? There's very few banks that'll lend me money. Royal Bank won't lend me money. As a matter of fact, Royal Bank canceled my account. Assets will be stranded, used gasoline cars. He's got this electric car thing going, right? You understand that? They were going to put 20% of all cars in Alberta had to be electric by the end of next year. But he rescinded that. BC said, no, we're not going to change that around. We're going to make that happen. But we don't have enough electrical grid power to actually charge 20% of our cars. We have 5 million cars in Alberta. That would be 1 million cars plugged in every night during the winter. And, of course, you understand, they don't go 100 kilometers in the winter. Ducharme Motors, which is a Bonnyville dealership, had an F-150 electric, and in the middle of winter, it got 95 kilometers per charge. And when it got cold, it got a little less. And actually, they were very happy when it got into an accident because they couldn't sell it. So actually, they got insurance money out of it. All right, but the problem with that is that we should have known Mr. Carney's philosophy months before that election. That should have been common knowledge. Everybody in this room should have known that, hey, that's as communist as you get. That statement he made right there, you can't get any more communist than that if you tried. All right, now Mr. Carney's only been in there for a few months, and he's allowing the government to seize and read your mail. He's taking away your freedoms and track your online data without a warrant. Bill C-2. And Bill C-2 doesn't do a lot of things. This is what it doesn't do. It doesn't do anything about Canada's 1.2 million temporary residents. It doesn't do anything about international students, guest workers, and other short-term entrants, many of whom overstay their visas. It doesn't propose any new funding for enforcement. It doesn't increase deportation capacity. It doesn't cap foreign worker permits. So it doesn't do anything that they don't want it to do if they want to take away our identity. You got to get a bigger camera, Max. Judges, so he sealed the ArriveCan report. What do you think was in it if he sealed this ArriveCan report? They gave him like $20 million to build an app. The guy said, don't build apps. So what do you think was in it that they sealed it? I just would like to know. I just don't understand. All right, here's the Anti-Aboriginal Act. So Mr. Carney's demanding power to suspend all federal laws, so no consultation. The Aboriginals are saying that, you know what, a free and independent Alberta is something that they're not sure they want, but I'm going to share something with you. They'll be way better off with us than with them. Because I believe that we will give them a fair shake, and it's in our value of freedom document. I actually think what's proposed in that document is excessive. I mean, that's how much it is, and if you get a chance to read it, read it. All right, gas vehicle, we dealt with that. Now here, Mr. Carney was asked by a CBC reporter if he has any conflicts of interest in his business portfolio. And he said no. Google it online, it's there. It was the chief political correspondent of actually the CBC, if you can imagine. And she asked him twice, 3 times. He said, basically, read my lips, no. I don't have that. He's actually got 103. That's crimes. The Prime Minister of Canada should be removed for 1. Never mind 103. Justin Trudeau had 82. He should have been removed for 1. Never mind 82. So what is happening? I'm going to ask you a question. Did we elect kings? Do you think we have a democracy if there's no rules for the people that are ruling us? That right there is the problem. How can we negotiate with criminals? Because that's what they are. These are actually criminal things. And we're talking about all this missing money, and these people are taking it, and they're not going to jail. Nobody's gone to jail for anything. They're stealing hundreds of millions of dollars, and nobody's going to jail. I'll guarantee you, if you don't pay your taxes for 2 years, you're going to jail. I guarantee you, if you steal from your employer, you're going to jail. If you steal from the people that you're supposed to be, if you have a trust fund and you steal from that trust fund, you're going to jail. So we trust them, but they steal our money and there's no consequences, so what's the natural reaction to that? They steal more. And do you think there's a chance that we're going to be able to change that? These people are entrenched in the bureaucracy of the federal government. Mr. Carney's policy towards the forestry sector, $1.2 billion total he gave to a company, but he's got major interests in West Fraser Timber. So his hidden trust, now I'm just going to ask you a question. If you had hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars invested in companies, would you remember what they were? You wouldn't remember if you owned Westinghouse and you had $100 million invested in Westinghouse? You wouldn't remember? Let's just use Westinghouse. They build nuclear reactors. So Mr. Carney owns a big part of Westinghouse. So in his first 6 big projects, one of them's a nuclear reactor. Right? Danielle said, we're going to give him 6 months. That 6 months is due right about the end of October. And what did she do today? She said, we're going to extend it. Said, we're going to extend it. So why are we going to extend it? Because Mr. Carney doesn't need Alberta. Mr. Carney's not going to change anything for Alberta. And I'm going to ask you a question right now. Even if he gives us a pipeline and they take all the money from it, what's the difference to us? And I'm going to share this with you. Do we have to leave? Yeah, we can't negotiate with these people. They won't negotiate with us. Are they going to rule themselves and throw themselves in jail and actually do audits on the stuff they've done for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years? No, they're not going to do any of that. So that's why we're here. The problem is, I could be an elbows up Canada guy if I thought that that was actually going to change things. But actually, things are going to get worse because they're telling us they're going to get worse. They're actually saying you're as well off right now as you'll ever be. We're going to take it down another level. Dennis alluded to C-69, tanker bans. What are they doing? They're landlocking our oil on purpose. That's what they're doing. All of this is designed to landlock Alberta oil. That's all it does. No other purpose for it, not happening in the East, just here. because they want to landlock our oil. Why do they want to landlock our oil? To stop us from earning, to hollow out the middle class, to hurt you and your kids. That's it. It's plain and simple. There's no other explanation for it. They pull the pin on an $11 billion Kitimat refinery project. Remember when Greece, Japan, and Germany came to Canada with their hat in their hand and said, would you please sell us natural gas? And Mr. Trudeau said, no, it's not in our business plan. His business plan is to break his people. So therefore, we can't sell you natural gas. And who picked that contract up? Qatar and the United States. The United States just, the Prime Minister, Premier of Poland was just in the news saying that they're buying Canadian natural gas from the U.S. We sell it to the U.S. for $4 a unit, and the U.S. is selling it to them for $14 a unit. And we're not selling it to them direct. Why? Why are we not mad about that? I know I am. And the differential between the world price and what we sell our oil to the Americans is costing us $60 or $70 million a day, every day. All right, pandemic preparedness for C-293. C-293 says that in the case of another emergency, now we saw in the last emergency that they took all of your rights and freedoms away, right? All of them. So, in an emergency, they can take your rights and freedoms away. We know that. So are they likely to create another emergency? So here's the thing. If they create another emergency, like C-293 says, that they will be able to come to your farm and seize your land and your herd. And they're going to make a law of that. And they're not ashamed of it. All right. Anybody know anything about the tariffs on canola that they just introduced? 75% tariffs on canola. Why did they do that? Because our government put a tariff on Chinese electrical cars. So the Chinese retaliated with a 75% tariff on canola and peas. Canola industry is bigger than the entire auto industry, steel industry, and aluminum industry in Eastern Canada combined. But they were protecting Eastern industry by putting a tariff on those electrical cars, because apparently they were going to come in at about under $20,000 retail. But now that they've tariffed the hell out of them, they're going to come in around $80,000 or $90,000 per car. All right. So here's the rest of the problem. The rest of the problem is they're capping our production. Not only do they not want to sell what we have, they want to cap it based on green ideology. I don't want to quote Donald Trump because I don't know who's in the room, but he was talking to the UN today and he said this climate stuff is something that was done by fools so the government could steal all your money. That's what he said. All right, let's have a look at this. Now, this is the highest oil-producing nations in the world. Understand this. I want you to pay attention to Norway and actually Saudi. We got something to say about Saudi as well. I'm sorry if I'm being so pessimistic. I just want you to understand that there's a reason we're doing this, and there's a path out of it. I know it's hard to listen to because we spent our whole lives expecting to live in the greatest country in the world, which I believe we do, but we got to get away from these people. You see these 386,000 barrels a day people, like they have to import oil. They haven't got enough oil to run their country. Qatar took some of that natural gas thing from us. They're producing natural gas and selling it to those countries. Norway, 2,020,000 barrels a day. Pay attention to that, please. Iran, 3.9. United Arab Emirates, 4.1 million barrels a day. There's Canada, 5.7 million barrels of oil produced every day. Russia, basically double what we produce. And if we weren't Saudi, 11 million barrels a day. And of course, the leader is the USA. So here's the reason for all that. 30 years ago, Norway came to Canada to start our oil patch. Now just understand that 5.7 million barrels of oil we produce a day, 87% of it is produced here in Alberta. 87% of that number. Now I've got some bad news for you. Norway actually doesn't have a $1.3 trillion oil fund. They have a $1.95 trillion oil fund, and that's in US dollars. All right? And we're broke. We're $100 billion in debt, and we produce twice as much oil as them. 2 times more oil than them. Where's the money? Where's the money? I'm serious. Isn't it disgusting? I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you 2 things. We'll be okay without those guys. We'll be okay without those guys. Mr. Pramandan, that Jeff alluded to, was the lead lawyer on the ad scam thing years ago in Quebec. And I remember hearing about it, but he was a little scandalized that we didn't really know what it was. And our response was, there's so many of those scandals come out of Quebec that we just can't keep up anyway. But the whole thing was that he said, if you saw that, that's what made him a politician. Right there on the spot, that was it. He said, I got to do something about this. This is insane. And that's exactly my response. I understood what's going on here, and we have to do something about this too, because this is literally insane. And I'm going to share something with you, a little known fact. They'll take us back. If we leave, they will take us back. We got nothing to lose here. We're producing. They're not producing. They're gatekeepers. They're bankers. We're the farmers, the miners, the oil producers. That's us. That's Alberta. We're creating the wealth. All they're doing is taking it from us. Are we going to allow it or not? That's our choice. Oil cap, here we go. We're going to talk about Green New Deal here. Real growth in GDP. Look at Canada. Dennis lied to you. They're not at the bottom. They're next to the bottom. Luxembourg's worse than us. 1.4% GDP growth in 10 years. Look who's at the top. Ireland and Poland. So what do they have compared to us? Very little. So what's happening is the government is consciously suppressing our industry so we don't grow. Because there's no other way to explain it. That's what they're doing. Consciously suppressing industry. And Mr. Trudeau is responsible for that. He started, actually that's mostly his 10 years. Mr. Carney said we're going to build the strongest economy in the G7. It shrank 1.6% since he started. He's supposed to be this brainiac banker. Well, maybe he is a brainiac. Maybe he's doing that on purpose. All right, let's go here. The carbon tax has cost Canadians billions of dollars over 5 years, hurting the economy while reducing CO2 emissions by 11.9 gigatons. China produces 11.9 gigatons of CO2 every day and a half. So we're shutting down our entire oil industry, and China produces as much CO2 as we've saved from the beginning of this program to now every day and a half. So what I'm trying to tell you is it's a lie. It's got nothing to do with that. Or they would change it. And here's the rest of it. Now look at this list. China has 1,161 coal power stations, USA 204, India 285, and Canada 8. And transmission distribution charges on your power bills are the fact that we shut the only cleanest burning coal burning plant in the world down. So now you're paying for it, which is costing you $4 billion, and it's half of your power bill. And you pay it every month. And in my case at the store, it's substantial. It would be really good not to have it. But you pay attention to who all these countries are, and then look at this. Do you see any of them paying carbon tax? None of them. Just us. And we pay second most carbon tax in the world. That carbon tax exponentially costs you 5 to 8% of what you earn, based on what it costs to transport stuff, based on what it costs to make electricity, based on all that kind of stuff. Do they understand that? What's the first thing that Mr. Carney shut down before he was elected? Carbon tax. And he brought it back, by the way. So why isn't Canada concerned about climate change? Because they already have a communist government. All right. So Mr. Carney brought back the carbon tax. He called it clean fuel regulations. All right. Here's all the taxes we pay. Now understand this. They throw taxes on you, we pay them. Do we have to pay them? Well, if we say no, all collectively we don't have to pay them. But if we don't pay them, then we can't buy products. A lot of it isn't on your paycheck. A lot of it's at the gas pump. A lot of it's at the grocery store. A lot of it's at the liquor store. A lot of it's at the cannabis store. A lot of it is all over the place. So they're taxing all that stuff, but in reality, what you pay in taxes is more than it costs to house, clothe, and feed your family every month. Now we're talking about taking that 44% and let's reduce it to something that Dennis said 5 to 8%. Let's just say we reduce it to 12%, right? 12% would for sure run everything. That would be a consumption tax based on everything you buy. 12%. We pay 5% GST and 5% carbon tax right now on everything. So all the rest of the taxes, well, here's the list. Carbon tax, personal income tax, corporate tax, goods and services tax, excise tax, fuel excise tax, alcohol tax, tobacco, cannabis tax, excise duties, air traveler security tax, luxury tax, provincial territorial tax, capital gains tax, land transfer tax, media tax, regulation tax, CPP tax, business tax, and estate tax. Estate tax is 50 to 65%. Understand, when you die, you're a rich person in Alberta, because if you own a house and a car, you're basically a millionaire. So once you get into that income bracket, then you're high income. So if you die, they get to, for example, let's talk about your house, they will get a chance to tax the difference between what you paid on your house, which is 40 years ago or 50 years ago for a lot of us, and what it's worth today. So let's say, for example, there's a $500,000 difference, which is really possible. So if they tax that at 50%, your kids are going to have to pay $250,000 tax on that alone. So the idea is, if you're not allowed to transfer money to your children, then they're not going to be as rich. That's simple. But if you're allowed to do that, then they would have a chance and a better chance to earn and continue to move on. And this is 43%. Never in the history of the world has a country been taxed over 25% and not gone to war, except here. All right, this is foreign aid. We're giving Iraq $1.08 billion a year in foreign aid. Do you see how much oil they produce? Do you think they need that? And I'm going to ask you a question. This is a money laundering scheme. So if you offer Iraq $1.8 billion and you say, I'll give you a check for $1.8 billion, you give me a check for $500 million back. What do you think they'd say? Just asking you. Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan was the biggest money laundering scheme in the history of the world. Do you know why, when they left Afghanistan, that all those choppers and everything went into the ocean? Because they could have flown them out, because they didn't want to count them. That's why. They didn't want to have to count them. Because if they had to count them, then there would have been things missing. Anyways, $11 billion on gender programs. All right, we're getting to the back of this. Last topic, gun control. Dennis touched on it. I'm a gun salesman, instructor, shooter my whole life. The average Canadian person that is not a gun owner, does not have a PAL, is 4 times more likely to commit a murder than a registered gun owner. That's a stat. So it's not about safety. It's about control. It's about not being able to defend yourself. Now here's what's happening. The amnesty is up at the end of the month. We have been chasing the UCP government. I personally have been chasing UCP government for 2 years to deal with this. I was promised last year, when we introduced the new Alberta Bill of Rights, that we would have the right to bear arms. And they changed that legislation. They put the right to bear arms in accordance to the law, which takes all the teeth out of it. And then let's talk about that document. They put notwithstanding clauses and First Amendments all over the place based on the first Section 1, not First Amendment, Section 1 of the Constitution of Canada. Now, Dennis alluded to the fact that this. Okay, so here's the deal. In a month from tomorrow, everybody in this room that doesn't turn in their restricted weapon becomes an automatic criminal. That means that you could be entitled to 5 years in jail, and that's the punishment for that. A gun offense is a very serious offense. You will not be able to leave the country probably ever again. The other thing that's going to happen there is if you become one of those offenders, they're going to take your PAL away because you've committed a crime and they know you have the gun. So they're going to grab your PAL. So the guns that you have, not only the restricted ones, all of them will be illegal. So your semi-automatic 22, all the rest of that stuff is going to be illegal because you will not have the license to own them. So as a consequence to that, we're kind of in a tough spot, right? And it's unnecessary. So do you cave and let them win? Or do you suck it up? Because they can't put 250,000 of us in jail, but they can sure as hell make it uncomfortable for us. So this is what I suggest. I am probably going to go to jail. So I'm just saying to you guys that if you all do the same thing, I'll have lots of company, at least. Or B, they won't be able to enforce it. So if this transpires, we're going to have a plan to try and deal with it on the short term. And that will be made very clear to every one of you long before it happens. But we've been asking them, so that we introduced the Alberta gun license to them, and that would have been a way to at least delay it. I have word today that Mr. Carney may extend that amnesty a little bit longer, but it doesn't matter if he extends it a month or two. By the end of the day, it's going to be the same thing. It's all coming, they want our guns. Because what happens when they take your guns? Because all political power comes from the barrel of a gun. The Communist Party must command all the guns. That way no guns can ever be used to command the party. And it always ends the same. Oh, that can't happen here. That can't happen here is what I hear. Would anybody believe that any of this stuff would be happening here? No. Me neither, honestly. All right, so here we go. In the well-regulated militia, the United States, after fighting the most popular, the biggest nation in the world at the time, and they won that war, they said that you need a well-regulated militia because it's necessary to the security of a free state. So if they take your guns away from you, you will not be secure. But you'll have to stand on that hill now because later on you won't have the opportunity to do it because you won't be able to. So the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and hopefully that's what a new and independent Alberta will look like, and we will allow people to own guns within, reasonable confines. I was selling guns before you needed a PAL, before there was a gun registry. And you know what? It was okay. It was okay. Do you remember when guys used to have all these guns in the windows of their truck? Like that. So you got to be old to remember that. Honest to God. In the parking lot of the high school, there was probably 20 half-ton trucks with guns in the window because everybody was hunting at the time. Yeah, remember that? All right. So this is what we got to do. We got to fight back, and how are we going to fight back? Within the law, because we're not criminals. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to the AGM, I hope, I'm going to ask you, and it's right here, it's in Edmonton. So we have to go to the AGM and represent our values. We have to tell the UCP government that we're not happy with the fact that we're not being protected from the federal government in any way, shape, or form. We're not happy that we're negotiating with those people and they're not answering us, and that they're not going to do any of the 8 demands, or even a few of the 8 demands that Danielle is asking for. We have to let them know that it's not okay. So we have to go to the AGM and be there, and we have to put our people on the provincial board. Because there's a difference between the government, the Smith government, and the board, which is the party. There's a big difference. The board can actually fire the leader with a 2/3 majority. The board, the people, like I'm a UCP CA chair, if you get 22 CAs to put the same motion, you can trigger an SGM. An SGM is a special general meeting, which is how we fired Jason Kenney. That's exactly how that happened. We called a special general meeting, a leadership review, and then Mr. Kenney lost his leadership review. You remember? Most famous thing Jason Kenney ever said. If that's my base, I want a new base. So we accommodated him. We gave him a new base. So away you go. And I voted for him. I voted for him. I wasn't any better than anybody else. I'll guarantee you I voted for him. All right. So the only person coming to save you is you. So we have to stand up to this. We have a path at APP. We've succeeded before in lots of things that we've done. We have a path to take us out of Canada. We have a short-term path and a plan B if they don't allow our motion to go through, which I believe is, I don't understand how it can be unconstitutional to ask a constitutional question. I don't get it. However, the Citizens Initiative Act was put there for citizens to be able to challenge the government and have bring enough signatures so they could bring a vote to them so that they would have to take and vote through the whole province. Let's have a vote. If that doesn't go through, we have a plan. We're probably going to need all of you to help us out. And here's the thing. Every single one of you has low-hanging fruit, has people that you know that support this, that are not on our list. And the reason they're not on our list, I totally understand, is nobody wants to be on a list. But we still have 250,000 people on a list. We have lots of people that are going to get us over the threshold because we only need 177,000 votes. And we have all these volunteers, and we have regional leaders in every region in Alberta. Every CA in Alberta, we have a regional leader, and we have provincial leaders, and we have people at every polling station. We have canvassers. We're ready to go. We're literally ready to go. So if they approve our question, we will have a referendum for independence. After that, the work is going to start, though. We have to win it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to get another chance. I promise you, we will not get another chance. So just understand this. The decisions that you make in the next 4 to 6 months are going to influence Alberta and Canada for the next 50 years. And your history has put you in a spot where it's going to be essential that you help us out. Thank you very much.
Okay, what did you guys think of that? Thank you, Dr. Modry and Mitch. That was excellent. Okay, at this time, we're going to start a question and answer. So we're going to have a mic being run around. Just raise your hand and we'll get to you. Do you want a line? Okay, we're just going to do a line here. So you can put your line right down the center, get in line. Try to keep your questions short. We don't need to hear a whole story. Just keep them.
Keep the questions under 20 seconds.
Yes.
Like 19.95 seconds. I'm serious. Just line the line here and just going to run the microphone. And also, For those who are not necessarily in the Q&A, would like to ask you to perhaps keep quiet for those who are in the meeting as well too. Okay.
Sorry. Okay, I have a question about First Nations and that, and what happens if they don't want to go on board with this? Because most of our oil patch and everything else is on First Nation land.
So the worst thing that could happen is it could stay status quo for them, right? Because we can have independent nations, like Aboriginal independent nations, all around Alberta. So they could continue to be independent, just like they are now. That's the worst thing that could happen to them. What we have proposed in the value of freedom is quite a bit more. We're talking about revenue sharing, we're talking about all manner of things, increasing their payment by quite a bit. There's 150,000 Aboriginals in Alberta, and there's 4.4 million people. Okay, so just understand the dynamic there. So, voting members, voting people. So just understand that that's what's happening. So yeah, we're 100% on board with helping them out and, you know, making their situation better.
So I want to touch on this because Mitch and I were involved with a panel at the We Unify conference recently. I think there's something important to understand. It is relevant to bring those people on reservations out of poverty. Obviously, the federal government hasn't done a very good job of that, and they've created a culture of dependence with respect to many people who are First Nations. So what has been proposed is so much better for them if they would just consider it. And many people who are First Nations, and we've spoken to some chiefs, in fact, the original policy proposal was drafted by Jeff Rath, and constitutional lawyer who's dealt with Aboriginal affairs, and Lawrence Corderell, who is a First Nations chief. But here's the thing. I mean, you can say, you know, I don't like the idea of two different citizens, okay? But what are we really talking about here? In a new Alberta, we solve the problem of economic disparity, meaning that many people who are Aboriginal don't pay taxes, right? All right, that frustrates a lot of non-Aboriginal people. It creates two citizens, it's unfair. By virtue of the fact of Alberta becoming a sovereign country, we're eliminating taxes. All right, now you have a level playing field with respect to taxation. They don't pay taxes, we don't pay taxes. Non-Aboriginals won't be paying taxes either. Second thing is, what is wrong with the single justice system, right? Same justice for everybody. Now the Aboriginals, you know, they can have, you know, just what they're doing now with certain things, but you have a common justice system. So you've leveled the playing field here as well. But the key thing is that any dollars that are used to help lift them out of poverty is transition. It's transitioning them to independence and to true equal citizenship. So think about it that way. Thank you.
Regarding this fall's AGM, when we elect board members, how would we know who's on board with us?
We'll make sure you know.
I'll hold the microphone.
That's for sure.
Yeah, you know, I mean, a 250,000 people that we have, and obviously there isn't going to be a 250,000 people that show up at the AGM, but those that do, who are aligned with APP, can vote, and vote the people who will be running for the UCP party board of directors. And it's not us recommending them. What you need to do is, what we will say is these are people that align with the policies and that we are proposing, okay? And that's how we can help you make that decision. We will identify the individuals that we believe will support the kind of policies we would like to see in a sovereign Alberta.
So for those who cannot see,
Oh yeah, and you need a UCP membership. If you don't have a UCP membership, you can't attend. So you need, and that costs $10, I think. Yeah, but it's $169 to actually register to go. So
Mr. Polivier is a member of the West World Economic Forum, is that correct?
I am not sure of that, but does it matter? Because when you think of Mr. Polyev in terms of running, what were 3 things that he didn't support? He didn't support an Alberta pension plan, right? He also didn't support ending equalization. He also didn't support ending the dairy cartel, right? These are all things that would have benefited Western Canada, particularly the prairies.
I just wanted to mention, like, I hear a lot of people thinking that we can change, and short of having war and using weapons, like they are saying, demonstrate, demonstrate, demonstrate. And I just wanted to say that the ostriches and all the demonstrations, the government has different weapons than what we might have. They've got our bank accounts, they've got our prisons, our hands are tied. There's nothing that we can do short of separation.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's
Succinctly stated.
I'm just wondering, how come he's not in jail with everything that he's done? No,
Wh-
I mean,
which one?
seriously. All of them, both of them, both of them. I don't understand that. And how come we're not doing something? Like they can do that in the States, why don't we do something here? Like
Well, it
whatever.
is interesting. I'll let Mitch answer this as well, but it is interesting to see what's happening in the U.S. As the administrations change, they obviously hate each other, the Democrats and the Republicans. So when the Democrats were in power, they were attacking Trump and anybody that was a conservative. Now the flip side has occurred. You know, what happens there in the U.S. does affect the rest of the world. And who knows what's going to happen, you know, moving forward. Yeah, it's a terrible mess, but we would be far better off being a sovereign country and in control of our own affairs with a constitution that protects our individual rights, limited government, and far more accountability to the public, including direct democracy.
I agree 100% with you. I agree 100%. I just don't understand how in the heck he can get away with what the hell he's been doing.
Because they're above the law.
No,
They've
not
created
above the
what they
law.
actually are, because
The only person that's above the law was the Queen, and she was the only person that could kill somebody and get away with it. And it says that in the law. So how the
understand.
hell can they do this?
well, let's just go back and see how you could prosecute them. It would be the judges that would have to convict them. So I'm not defending them. Like, don't you understand this? I want them to go to jail, and in a new independent Alberta, in our Constitution, they will go to jail. They will go to jail. In Singapore, they pay their politicians $1 million a year and hang them if they break the law. Just saying, you know, that's a lot of money, but there's a lot of consequence, and I think we would be so far better off with that system, just saying. Sweet.
Hello. So in the spring, the polls were showing that support for separation were around 37%.
Right.
And I was listening to one of your podcasts, Dr. Modri, and you were saying that it was in the 40s or mid-40s or something. And I was just wondering what that's based on.
Well, there were 2 polls. One was 45%, the other one was 47%. Now, you know, let me touch on the issue of polling for a second. Do you believe the polls? All right. So we live in an era of cancel culture. And if you want to understand where I'm going with this, is think of the U.S. federal election last November. Did the polls predict the outcome? No, they didn't. Neither did the exit polls. And in Canada, we have cancel culture as well. And the best example is what happened with the trucker convoy. People had their accounts frozen. So when people are asked a question in a poll that might compromise their circumstances, they don't answer the question. But let's look at something that actually was a real referendum to give you an idea of where Albertans might be. Think of the 2021 referendum to end equalization. 62% of Albertans voted to end equalization, right? What happened? Nothing. But from a thought exercise, how many of that 62% would vote in favor of Alberta sovereignty if they knew that the only way to end equalization was for Alberta to become a sovereign country? So you see where I'm going with this. We think that what we are seeing and the people that are contacting us, we think we probably have well over 1 million supporters of Alberta sovereignty already. Even though we have about 250,000 people that are registered with us, they don't want to, many people won't register because they're concerned about cancel culture. However, just so everybody knows, we are obligated by law not to share the contact information with anybody that's on our nation builder list of all the people that are already registered. They don't have to worry about being, caught out by CRA or the federal government. So that's an important issue.
Mr. Plamondon told us, the Pachikwakwa leader, he said that if you're in the 40s, by the time you get done your campaign, you'll be over the top. And I really believe that. And I know we're in the 40s. The other thing that you have to remember is lots of young people didn't vote the last time, and we're getting a tremendous amount of support from young people.
Hi, my name is Kate. I'm from Devon. I just wanted to mention that in our town, not long ago, there were some people that had, lovely people, who had a nice table that wanted people to sign a petition to stay in Canada. Now, my question is, not long ago, I watched a free video online that was called Canada, the Illusion. And it seemed to be put together by a whole bunch of lawyers that went back through our history of Canada and realized that our provinces were never really properly ratified into being a country, and this was just sort of ignored. What is your take on that?
Well, that was put together by Doug Force, and I've had lots of interaction with Doug Force. Doug Force actually just passed away here 6 or 8 months ago. But here's the thing. It's based on the Statute of Westminster. So the Statute of Westminster is actually what Ireland used to become a free country. And it's legit here, but we don't believe in our system that our court system is going to acknowledge it because it's not to their benefit. So the first thing we have to do, if we want to even have a chance to acknowledge that that exists, is to win the referendum. Once we win the referendum, if we win the referendum, then everything's on the table. That is the first, most important, only step that we have to focus on right now, and then after that, everything's possible.
We are landlocked. So how do we deal with that?
Well, we're policy locked, so understand the difference. We are landlocked. There's no oceans around us. 90% of our exports go south, so it has absolutely no, landlocked isn't as big a deal as people make it out to be. The other thing is that Port of Prince Rupert, with the sea can place that lands all the sea cans on the west coast, is in Rupert, and they ship them all across Alberta. 90% of those sea cans go across Alberta. So we could tariff every single one of those sea cans if we were our own government. So British Columbia, we would have to go to the table and say, we'll build a pipeline, you guys can put your stuff through Alberta. And the adults in the room, I think, would find a way to make that work. And also, international law says we cannot be landlocked, so they have to have a way to put us to the coast. So there's lots of stuff that we can do. As far as the landlocked is concerned, I think if we take away the policies that don't allow us to tax stuff coming through Alberta, we'll be more than fine.
Could be EB, right?
Well,
Is that 3 more years?
Mr. Eby has a unique problem, right? Mr. Eby's government is propped by 2 Green MPs, MLAs, right? So he can't, even if he wanted to do something, those 2 Green guys could bring down his government. So not that I'm a big David Eby fan, but I'm just saying there's circumstances there that may change in the near future. But here's the thing. What's BC going to do when those trains are 2 miles long. Like I've driven with them and by them. I go fishing in Prince Rupert every year for 2 weeks. So I'm very familiar with the port. I'm very familiar with the trains. And they come actually down there and they go right across. 90% of the stuff that lands in Rupert goes east. So they're actually, and that's just one example. And the other thing is we produce a lot of oil for BC. So they would have to be concerned with the fact that if we weren't happy, in the middle of winter, we could shut the tap off. Not that I think that would be reasonable, but it's an option.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there's all this talk about us being the 51st state or being annexed by the USA. How would that affect this, what we're doing here? Or is that even something to worry about?
No, it's something to discuss, but not to worry about. So when our general counsel, Jeff Rath, and I were in Washington in April, we had this discussion. In fact, before we sat down at the table, we were advised that the U.S. administration is strongly in support of Alberta's sovereignty, and they recognize that Alberta 51 is not on the table. But here's why. For one thing, in order for Alberta to join the U.S., this is what would have to happen. First, you have to have a referendum to become a sovereign country. And then once Alberta is a sovereign country, then there would have to be a second referendum by the people of Alberta saying that we would like to join the United States as the 51st state. And then the third criteria is you'd need a 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives and in the Senate agreeing that Alberta should join. So it's not even realistic to think about that at this particular time. But for those people who like the idea of joining the U.S., they also like the idea of getting out from under federal oppression, federal subjugation, domination, exploitation, and the inhibition of our self-determination. So they will also vote in favor of Alberta sovereignty with the hope that at some point in the future we could join. But it's not in the cards.
So that young lady over there is telling us that it's time to go home. So one more question, please.
So we know that we're playing up against the corrupt. Moving forward towards a referendum, how do we make sure that 2 months out, a month out from the referendum, we don't have an influx of 2 million Easterners who magically got Alberta driver's license voting in that?
Well, we don't, but we have to be aware, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that they're going to try to cheat. So I've actually, there was a lady that I worked with in the past who wrote a pretty in-depth paper on tabulators and how they affect elections, and she actually was the author of the paper that made the government of Alberta take tabulators out of our system, and she's agreed to be the head of security for us going through the election, and we're going to make sure that we have people at every polling station. A lot of that cheating happens right at the polling station. Now, I had a discussion with the Premier about what you're going to have to be in order to be able to vote. Well, you're first of all going to have to be a Canadian citizen, and the second thing is you're going to have been in Alberta for a certain amount of time. Okay, so those are the two things that we're proposing.
Can I answer that question?
Hang on a sec, Max. Because you're wondering about following a successful referendum, the Alberta being flooded? Just before, I see. Okay, well, he answered the question. Go ahead, Max.
So basically, when I was in Britain about 1 month ago, there was this exact question. And the answer was basically, if you previously voted in the last provincial election, you're eligible to vote for the referendum.
Yeah, so I like that. Now I'm going to leave you with something which I think you're going to find fascinating for those who don't know, okay? The Quebec legislature voted 100% to end the relationship with the monarchy. Did you know that? 100%. Mr. Plamondon, when he becomes Premier of Quebec, will ensure that the Lieutenant Governor for Quebec is gone. It raises the question, if Quebec is not recognizing the monarchy and our Constitution is a constitutional monarchy, are they already a separate country? In a way, they probably are already, but that would cement it, but he still wants to have a referendum. So working collaboratively with Quebec will benefit us all. Thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts.